back. We're live here on a given Monday on ThinkTech Talks. Finding Our Future is the name of the show. And our host is generally John A. Sweeney, and he continues to join us even from his present location, which is in Moscow, Russia. This is coming to you from Moscow, Russia, and his host is Alexander Chulok, and they are both into futures, and that's why we're calling this show From Russia with Foresight. We have them on separate Skype windows, and we are so excited to be able to have them both on the show and have the show come from Russia. Welcome to the show, you gentlemen, John Sweeney and Alexander Chulok.
Good morning.
Morning.
Great. John, why don't you take over and introduce your guest, Alexander Chulok.
Great. Thank you, Jay. It's truly an honor to be joined by Dr. Alexander Chulok, who is the head of science and technology Foresight at the Higher School of Economics. And I am in town for the annual Foresight and Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy, and I'll be seeing a bit of him over the next couple days. And so we thought this was a great opportunity to chat, talk about Foresight in Russia, and how the futures is being used here. So, Alexander, good morning. Thank you again for joining us. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your research and how Foresight fits into what you do and how you see science and technology building and shaping the futures.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. So, once again, good morning, everybody. It's early morning in Russia, but every Foresight is ready to go to the future. So, what do we see in Russia is rapid growth of future-oriented research in science and technology foresight recent 5 or 7 years. One of the interesting things is that research is going not only from, let's say, government push, I mean ministries and etc. Lots of companies, corporations, cities, regions ready to go for foresight and interested in future development. And I'm going to tell you about one of the projects that is, I can tell it's a heart of Russian foresight. It's Russian Foresight 2030. The results of this project were mentioned by President Putin in last address to Federal Assembly of Russia. So, what do we have here? First of all, I'd like to say that there are a global search for a new agenda for S&T policy, and global challenges is one of the key aspects of this agenda, of course. So, what we do in this project, we try to find from one hand some S&T areas that could lead Russia to integration of the world value chains, and from other points we're searching for some white spots and young sprouts for Russia S&T areas. The directions of S&T areas of this research based on ICT, life science, new materials, rational use of nature, transparent space, and energy efficiency. And we combine this technology push and market pull approach to understand what are the areas of excellence and where we can compete, where we can integrate, and where's the white spot. So, what are preliminary results of this project show that main zones of main spheres of interest, of course, are in nanotechnologies, in some ICT areas where we can integrate in big models and mathematics, in rational use of nature, and in some kind in energy and energy efficiency. But of course, we face lots of challenges, and I'd like to say a few words about what is very important for Russia. For example, in life science, spread of oncological and cardiovascular diseases is a global, big global challenge for everybody. But for Russia, it's a double challenge because it's very important for us to face it and to understand what S&T response, what ground response should be to this challenge. For climate change, as we talked 30 minutes ago, and for spread of environmental pollution, it's another global challenge for the whole world, and it's very important for Russia as well, because we could understand what asymptotic areas could be. For example, development of new technologies for environmental safety recycling and disposal of toxic substances is one of the windows of opportunities where Russia could integrate in global change. So one of the idea of this project was searching what could be the responses for challenges, what windows of opportunities can we use, and what should we do with asset responses to be on the top. But another point, and I think it's very interesting, not only from the view of this project, but also with international point of view, is something that we call wild cards. Everybody is talking about wild cards now, and sometimes if you can see some future-oriented films, or if you can think about the future, it's also wild cards. But we thought of wild card base of S&P because it's a very important trend where life cycle of the products is going rapid and rapid, and the problem is how to integrate it and how to face it. So one of the wild cards that is very important, it could be in energy. Lots of free, safety, and well, I think it could be thermonuclear energy, or maybe mini reactors that could be for everybody, for you, for me, not to plug and to feel it's very, very safety. Will it be or not? I don't know, but that will change the balance. If you look at lots of forecasts, if you look at lots of foresights for energy sector, for lots of world companies, they always struggle. They struggle and they use their forecasts to face the realities and sometimes to promote their interest. But if we talk about this wild card at mini nuclear reactors, for example, that will save everybody who needs the energy, that will be a really breakthrough. Another thing, and well, it's a pity to say that I'm not sure that we can face this technological wave, is 3D printing, 3D bioprinting. Well, if you know it, some futurologists, not foresighters, but people who face the future, in the age of the future, say that by 2045, everybody will be immortal. It will be because of bioprinting, it will be because of medicine, and it will be wild card for everybody, for behaviors, for energy, for economic models. Because I'm a PhD in economics and I'm interested in rational use of some behaviors, but every economic model has its assumptions. It will break all the assumptions, and it's very interesting. It will be new society with new peculiarities, with new consumption, with demand. How to face this demand is very important. Another thing that we're talking about was skills. What skills do we need to face this future? So we're talking about grand challenges, we're talking about markets, products, we're talking about S&P responses, but what about people? What about skills and personnel that will face this future, live in this future? In Russia here, we have very, very strong education school. Educational universities are going from Soviet Union. But is it the background or is it the obstacle? This is the question. What should you teach, or what should be the specification of master products, of lectures, etc., there's a future. And I think that it's more important to be ready to the future than to know the future. To be ready for changes. And it's very, very fundamental assumption, I think, that breaks some understanding of knowledge and knowledge law here. Well, maybe we could talk about some understanding the road and maps of the road and road mapping. Because that was another point of this project. So we tried to go through the challenges, responses, science, to concrete understanding what we should do now for road mapping. Road mapping for innovation products, road mapping for technology sectors, road mapping for S&T areas. And going from very, very high to very, very concrete results and to implementation of these results into system of technology forecasting. We in Russia, we are building a system for technology foresight, and this system includes ministries and interdepartmental commissions. This system includes companies. This system includes universities, and I think that it's very important to play the role for everybody. I mean, that each actor in innovation economy should play its own role for going to the future. And one of our mission, maybe it's a bit ambition, but one of our mission is to foster innovation culture and to foster foresight culture here. Because my personal concern is that future starts from behavior of each person.
That's good.
I'll try to be as short as I could.
No, that was great. I wanted to jump in and quickly. Yeah, I wanted to jump in and quickly ask you a bit more about that because I see in many ways a different model playing out in the U.S. A lot of the foresight in the U.S. is driven by the private sector. There are government projects, but there's a tendency, and certainly this has been, I think, at one extreme of the political spectrum in the U.S., is to get government out of the way, rather than having government play an integral role. And so it's good to hear, and I think we see that model in other countries, Korea, Singapore, certainly in the Nordic countries as well, utilizing government and getting foresight into government and connecting all of those actors. And so I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about how you reached out to those different communities and how you saw them being integrated into what I assume is a government-funded project then. Is that correct?
All right, with pleasure. Well, but first of all, I'd like to say that I thought a bit about what should be the framework of the system. Should it be free or should it be state-owned? And I think, like an economist, I think that it strongly depends on the economy that you have. So if we're talking about economies where state plays minimal role, not in Kyrgyzstan style, we should think of free drivers, and each player should understand that foresight, forecasts, and common vision is important for him for competitive advantages. And this is one story. Another story is when the state plays a very strong role in economy. It's not good or not bad. It's a story. Like in China, in South Korea, in Russia, state plays very important role here. So why not to use it? And we use state and state-owned corporations to communicate to this audience and to do foresight and forecasts. But we shouldn't forget that for each state-ruled or state-owned economy, each decision is placed by people.
Thank you, Alexander. This is Jay. in Honolulu. I just want to, we're coming on a break now, and I want to tell our listeners that this is ThinkTech Talks Finding Our Future on Monday afternoon. We're calling this show From Russia with Foresight. It features the normal guest for Finding Our Future, John A. Sweeney, who was actually in Russia at the time, in Moscow, and Alexander Chulok, who was also in Moscow. And we're talking to both of these individuals by Skype. We are delighted to be able to make the connection. John, I wonder if you could take one moment and just sort of summarize where the conversation has gone, and reintroduce your guest, Alexander Chulok, and then we'll take a short break.
Sure, absolutely. So we're hearing a lot about a really exciting project. It seems that Russia is on the cutting edge of finding ways to leverage the strengths of different sectors. So looking at the private sector, looking at government, looking at how you can bring in universities and have what seems to be, in some ways, a national push towards a conversation about developing policies to truly incubate science and technology and to leverage these specifically to solve what are clearly global challenges. So certainly the diabetes and obesity epidemic is an issue in the US and other parts of the world, climate change and energy. These are critical issues that are going to really define where we go in the 21st century. And I'm certainly pleased to hear that Russia is doing its utmost to take these on and to leverage its strengths to try to navigate these changes. And I think that's what is really critical, what really stuck out to me, what Alexander was saying, is that it's not about knowing the future, it's about building the future, and about doing that by managing uncertainties and being able to move forward with the best information you have, and then continuously reevaluating that information as you go. So it's really an honor to be joined by Dr. Chulok, who is the head of Science and Technology Foresight at the Higher School of Economics. And it looks like we're taking a break, and we'll be back in a bit.
Okay, we'll be right back. This is From Russia with Foresight by way of Skype with John A. Sweeney, our host on Finding Your Future, and Alexander Chulok, another futurist, both from Moscow. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Welcome back to ThinkTech on a Monday. This is ThinkTech Talks, Finding Our Future, with its regular host, John A. Sweeney, who joins us by Skype from Moscow with his guest, Alexander Chulok. Both of them are futures experts, and they're talking about futures and comparing the way futures are handled, evaluated in both U.S. and Russia. So back to you, John Sweeney, more From Russia with Foresight.
Thanks, Jay. So when we left for the break, we were having a bit of a conversation about some of the differences between Russia and the U.S., but then also Alexander was starting to talk a little bit about the idea of creating a story. And one of the things I immediately thought when you used that metaphor was, I hope all these stories have happy endings. But because we're talking about a global interconnected system, it's often the case that, if one person has a happy ending, that means the other person doesn't. So I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about, maybe based on the forecasting and the models you created, what would be your preferred future, or what you see as being the preferred future for science and technology and innovation in the context of Russia's best case scenario futures?
Well, I think, frankly, that the future is a bit unknown. It's very amazing and very interesting. But we have some vectors. I mean that we have some scenarios and we have some chance to go to that scenario that you prefer. For talking for Russia, I think that one scenario could be in nanotechnologies and using different nanomaterials for lots of sectors, because it's not how economists say vertical, it's horizontal. I mean that you can use nano in everything. You can use nano in, for example, in medicine to struggle cancer and to do smart drugs, for example. You could use nano in transparent space for intellectual transportation systems and for new materials to make transport energy saving. You can use nano in biotechnology, of course. You can use nano in ICT. And I think that one scenario, or say one big folk, is using nano for all sectors and changing value chains. I think that one of the interesting things to do for the space 5, maybe 7 years, that will be changes in global value chains. So we all are used to think that everything is constant, and we saw this shop, we saw this industry, we saw this sector. But at the time when telegraph appeared, you don't need birds, or you don't need anybody to message. So no doubt when telegraph appeared, and I think that we'll see lots of breakthrough innovations in near future. That will be very amazing and very interesting. I think that we'll face lots of innovations in ICT and in understanding deeper and deeper the processes. I mean the process of flying of the aircraft, and the process of tubes, the process of everything that is here, and some reality could be another. And even if you enter Moscow tube, for example, you'll see lots of people that are looking at their smartphones. They don't read newspapers. If you come, for example, and tell even 10 years ago, you say everybody reading newspapers.
Yeah.
Now everybody is looking at smartphones, headphones, and it's not society. And I think that we, Foresighters, should pay a lot of attention for changing society, because there are lots of people that are going for ethnic society, people going for modeling, models, semantic models, lots of economic models, and etc., etc. But we should understand that at the last step, you close the door of your office and you go to society. And changing the society could be very, very important. And all these technologies could change it rapidly. Maybe it could be some chips in your head, biochips. Maybe it could be next generation of storage in the memory. It could be connection to global network. But people who do this policy, people who do this innovation economy, could change their attitude to everything, and I think it's very important.
It is important, as you're saying. Sorry to jump in. That there are immense ethical implications to this kind of work, right? That you're saying that these new technologies and essentially these innovations often disrupt traditional models, not only of social interactions, but of even what we consider to be ethical and ethical norms. And so I wanted to talk specifically about the nanotechnology and the correlative biotech, because recently in Hawaii, on the island of Kauai, there was a massive protest, and apparently it's going through to have these products. They want to have them marked and then to not have them used. And I think Russia underwent a similar movement related to genetically modified organisms as well. So could you maybe talk a little bit about that and how you see, again, what I agree tends to be a very interesting trend, a very interesting emerging issue related to massive advancements in biotech and nanotech, and yet some social pushback, some people concerned, right? And so I'm wondering if maybe you could say a bit about how you see that process, what's happened with that, and potentially some ways that futurists could help to navigate that sort of divide.
Well, if we're talking about GMO, So now, as I know, in Russia, it's restricted to plant GMO, but we import GMO. And there are two basic models of agriculture. So if you go to big farms, if you go to mass production, of course we can do it without GMO, and well, it's our future. Or we should just face it. But there's another story, another scenario when you don't have big farms, you have very small farmers. And it could be bioplanting without GMO, without any pesticides, without any chemicals, without everything. So you just do it as they do it 2,000 years ago, and it's another trend. And everyone will choose what trend you prefer. For me personally, I think that if it works for 2,000 years, maybe it will work for more 2,000 years. But of course, like a science, like the Foresight, I understand that we should face this GMO future, and we should be ready for it. I'd like to say that smart agriculture could be one of the breakthroughs in the whole world. When you use lots of ICT technologies, when you use biotechnology, when you use lots of sensors, and you know everything about this specific plant. You know everything about your farm, and you could just manage it sitting here with your computer. Of course, it's a new stage of agriculture. Of course, it's a new scenario. But when you use this tomato, it's an old story about eating. Of course, if we don't use some pills or something like that. So I think that from the government point of view, we should understand what trends are and in what trend we have to integrate. Because there's a big trend of smart of everything, smart of transport, smart of cities, smart of agriculture, smart of materials, smart of drugs. Everything is smart, and we have to be so smart to use it.
Right, and that's one of the key questions about the smart trend, as you're saying, is smart for whom? Which is to say that a lot of the concerns about GMO and advancements in biotech, it relates to patenting. In other words, who owns the sort of knowledge, the process? And so I'm wondering, do you see then that there's a necessity to move towards a commons-based approach for these kinds of technologies? In other words, how do you still manage innovation and allow for technological development, which some argue requires sort of the patenting model, or at least a version of it that we've had? But how do we find our way towards increased development and then allow these open source communities to come into that and participate within them?
What's a very tough question, because what do we do in Russia? So we have innovation strategy 2020, and we do innovations from two ways. So first, it's government house. Well, I can say that it's government-driven innovation. It's driven from ministers. It's driven from institutions, from leading universities. And of course, it's one very important trend to set the vectors and to set the innovation directions. Another trend we face is innovations from S&P, from small companies, innovations from regional universities. So what we do now, we're trying to combine two trends. First trend is setting priorities from a government point of view, and another trend is understanding what we should do within these priorities on a regional level, on the level of each company. And one of the problems is that there's some lag or gap between demand side and supply side. It goes from Soviet period, when science and technology and innovations were very close in one plant, in one planning system. And when in perestroika time, about 20 years ago, it was destroyed. And now we're trying to building the bridges. And it cannot be done in 1 year. You can build a bridge between two generations in 1 year, even 5 years. It's very, very long process. And it's a process of bridging up supply and demand side of innovations. It's a process about bridging the generations of different innovators when you share your experience. And of course, it's very important to create a networking system. What we've done inside this project and Necessity Foresight 2030, we created a system of Foresight centers based on leading universities on the same structure as I have already told. So I mean, for ICT, for NANA, for transport, etc., etc. We built the network on the whole Russia, and now it includes about 200 participants and about 2,000 experts.
Alexander, we're going to take a short break. John Sweeney and Alexander Chulok, we're going to take another short break. John, before we do, I wonder if you could reintroduce your guest and recap what the discussion has been over the past few minutes and what you contemplate for the next few minutes after we come back from the break. So why don't you, recap, and then we'll take a short break.
Sure, Jay. Well, we're having the pleasure of talking with Dr. Alexander Chulok, who's the head of Science and Technology Foresight at the Higher School of Economics here in Moscow. And our conversation went from talking about sort of the specific challenges about getting all of the stakeholders together into more of the issue-based and looking at biotech, nanotech, GMO. How do you navigate these changes, and how do you figure out how do you move from having a forecast to then having actual social change? And I think it was really interesting to hear about the potentialities for these different paths and the way you try to leverage, again, these community strengths. So getting in all of the stakeholders. It's really exciting to hear that this is happening not only at the national level, but at regional levels as well, and to try to leverage, again, everyone's strengths to move towards an integrated system and network, because clearly, again, these things to actually be successful need management, need regulation, and need continual sort of feedback to sort of have them, again, bringing the kinds of futures that we'd like to see happen. So again, I'm John Sweeney, talking to Dr. Alexander Chulok, head of Science and Technology Foresight at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow. This is Finding Our Futures. What's the title again, Jay? We're
calling from Russia with Foresight. That's John Sweeney and Alexander Chulok. They're both futurists. This is ThinkTech Talks on our standard Monday afternoon show, Finding Our Future. John is the host of that show. And we are broadcasting my image from Honolulu, but their images both from Moscow, Russia. And we're delighted to be able to make that connection and to have this show. And we'll come back in a minute. And when we come back, John, I hope you'll cover, at least among other things, how influential futurists are in Russia, and how does that compare with the influence they have in the U.S. and in Hawaii. We'll be right back after this break.
I'm Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. We do monthly luncheon programs with ThinkTech about things that matter to Hawaii entrepreneurs, investors, and business service providers. So join us on the fourth Thursday of every month at the Plaza Club. For information about upcoming events or to join our mailing list, visit hvca.org. See you there.
Live. This is ThinkTech Talks, Finding Our Future, Monday afternoon with our host, John Sweeney, who is in Moscow, Russia, and talking to us by Skype, with his guest, Alexander Chulok, who is also in Moscow, Russia, talking to us by Skype. We're talking about From Russia with Foresight, and we'll have a little more of that now. John, why don't you continue the discussion?
Great, thanks, Jay. So one of the things that we were just chatting a bit about during the break was, again, some of the differences, some of the resonances. But Alexander, could you specifically speak to the relationship that you have with the government, what role the government plays into this, and then how you see the role of foresight working out in different contexts. I only mention that because I know I've talked with futurists in Singapore. Singapore has cabinet sort of ministerial level position. They have an office of foresight there that does lots of work. And so is that similar to what's happening in Russia, or is this really at the cusp of being built for that future?
Thanks for the question. It's very, very important question, because you research, and do research, and now it has a question, and so what? And in our research and in this project, the results were already used to structure and to form Russian S&T policy. So it was used in several very important documents. Well, I can tell you that there's a long-term forecast for social economic development, and one of the part of our foresight was directly included in this project. Another point is building a system of technological forecasting, called the system of technological foresight in Russia, and inside the system, all ministers, I mean, Minister of Economic Development, Ministry for Health, Ministry for ICT, and etc., are including our results to structure their projects and to structure their programs. So what we try to do now, what we try to build now in Russia, is a complex system for technological foresight and forecasting that could implement directly the results of foresight and forecast, and use it in everyday decision making. And the results of this study that I was talking about, the Foresight 2030 in Russia, were used not only on federal level, they were used for aircraft building sector to elaborate their program and to build a roadmap using these results. So we go from very high level of understanding what the future will be on a state level to the level of particular stakeholders, and to integrating this results in their profit function. As an economist, I can say. So if we could integrate or incorporate the results of foresight to building the future for each stakeholder, this future will come. So this is the basic principle of foresight. You should involve stakeholder, and you should do it on the very, very first step. One of the mistakes that some foresighters could do is trying to share results after the project is done. So you come to stakeholder, you come to your client and say, all right, so now I have a very, very big report, please read it. Big mistake. So you should include all your clients at the beginning, and you should share this future with your client, with your stakeholder, and only after that, every company, each company, and each stakeholder say, all right, I want to live in this future. Why? Because I participated in its building. I think it's very important exercise, and very important example from Russia, how the future could be built, not after the research is done, but the process of research. I think it's one of our good points that we've done.
It's exciting to hear. I know that's one of the, I'd say, not key differences, but a lot of the foresight that's done in the U.S., at least at the sort of public sector level, tends to have, or at least wants to have, immediate results, and oftentimes it's very difficult to get politicians who are elected on fairly short cycles to see long term. And so, interestingly, a lot of the foresight that's done in the U.S. that I'd say has a lot of impact is actually done at the private sector, and then also at the military scale. And so a lot of the advanced research that happens certainly here in the U.S. gets put towards those two sectors. So oftentimes at least in my research, we find a disconnect. Although I will say Hawaii is a bit of an outlier. We did a project a couple of years ago for the State Office of Planning, and a piece of legislation came out of that specifically geared towards dealing with climate change. And Hawaii was one of the first states to sort of think about that critically and to try to find policies for that. And so I was really glad to hear when you mentioned how the last thing you want to do is hand your client a giant, a couple 100-page report and say, okay, here's your future, read this, right? That having buy-in from the beginning and getting them to participate throughout the process is critical. And so I'm wondering if we could shift gears a little bit. If you could say how that's playing out specifically with climate change. I know in my research, some of the critical issues certainly that's come up recently are what's going to happen with the Arctic, not only for shipping, but how do we deal with things like sea level rise? How do we navigate the potentiality for permafrost thawing? So I'm wondering if you could maybe highlight some of the key issues related to climate change, and then maybe talk about how you see S&T policy or science and technology addressing some of those specific climate change challenges.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but let me be a bit more broad, because what we call now in our project is rational use of nature. It's one of the S&T areas that includes, of course, climate changes, but it also includes, for example, spread of new environmental diseases. So it's I think that we should understand what are the circumstances of each changes, and what is a group of effects for each global challenge. I think it's very important. For example, if we're talking about climate change, we should talk about, for example, increase in diseases because of climate change. We should talk about effects of urbanization and effects for cities. We should talk about increasing death rates of pollution, because it's also a very big challenge. But what we saw from our project, what we saw from our research, it's not only challenges; it's windows of opportunity as well. And what, based on expert analysis, for Russia, for example, one of windows of opportunity is research, everything which concerns research of earthquake and state. And we have very strong theoretical school now based on Moscow State University, and our researchers in the sphere are well cited. And I think that exploration of the Arctic and research in this could be one of the opportunity of Russia for integrating in global value chains. Another thing that for Russia, which is very important, is new technologies for recycling and for safe recycling, environmentally friendly recycling, because urban problem is going up, and we should understand about new technologies for this. And this is another window of opportunity for implementing these technologies and for creating these technologies. And unfortunately, for the last 5 or 7 years, the green growth wasn't in the center of political view. But now, the Minister of Energy, the Ministry of Regional Development, and other ministers are paying more and more attention for green technology. I think that it's another interesting trend that is very actual for Europe, for example, and it's very important for US. And now we are in the beginning of entering this the trend of everything is green. So everything should be smart, everything should be green, and everything should be. Anyway. Getting back to S&T forecast and getting back to S&T Foresight and new technologies, I think that another interesting direction could be understanding the nature of things and the theoretical models. So my personal view is about 20 or maybe 30 years ago, we used more or less everything from the theoretical base that we had about 100 years ago. But now we need a new theoretical base for everything. We need a new theoretical base for ICT processes. We need new theoretical base for climate change. New understanding of what is happening, including sensors, now including new windows of opportunity. And of course, in this theoretical base, Russia could play a very sufficient and very important role because we have strong schools of understanding what is going on. And then maybe in 20-25 years, there will be a new wave of technologies based on this new theoretical basis. So everything is going away for a curve. But anyway, I think that we're standing at the beginning of a new curve and new understanding.
Thank you, Alexander. I wanted to tell you guys we're coming up on the third break. And this is ThinkTech Talks, Finding Our Future on Monday afternoon with host John Sweeney, who is in Moscow, talking to us by Skype with his guest, Alexander Chulok. Both of them are futurists, and Dr. Chulok is also talking to us by Skype, and it's actually 7:45 in the morning. We really appreciate you getting up early for this. We're calling this from Russia with Foresight, and we're going to take a break in a minute. I hope, John, that you will take a moment to bring us current on the conversation, recap it a little bit after this last quarter. And also, I wanted to ask you what you'd be covering in the last quarter. I wondered if you'd be interested in covering, Alexander, some of the events that have happened involving Moscow and Russia recently, and whether they suggest trends. I'm referring, of course, and we would be remiss if we didn't ask you about the big news story over Ed Snowden, and electronic surveillance and whistleblowing disclosures, and potential asylum, especially for Snowden and people like him in Russia. Do those events suggest anything that a futurist would be concerned about, that a futurist would find trends in? Anyway, I turn it back to you, John, and then we'll take a break.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jay. So just to recap, our conversation turned to think specifically about how futurists can connect with government, and it's certainly good to hear that government seems to be listening in Russia, seems to be actively concerned and interested in creating, again, a better future. And then we started to talk a little bit about climate change, and it was really glad to hear Dr. Chulok say that every challenge always presents and offers opportunities. And so we always want to think about, again, the both positive and negative aspects of every event, every issue, every concern that we have to deal with. And so navigating those changes and thinking about how they disrupt traditional models requires us to think about what Zia Sardar has said is the post-normal age, and how we find our way to navigating uncertainty in the post-normal age. And it certainly sounds like Russia's on a good track. So, okay, in the last 15 minutes, I think Jay asked a great question, thinking specifically about, obviously, some of the current geopolitical issues that have come up recently, how science and technology specifically, how S&T policy, deals specifically with things like, obviously, the PRISM scandal in the US and around the world, how you deal with whistleblowing. And so we can turn to think about surveillance, science and technology policy related to that. But we're going to take a quick break. So I'm John Sweeney, live from Moscow, joined by Dr. Alexander Chulok, head of Science and Technology Foresight at the Higher School of Economics here in Moscow. And we'll send it back to you, Jay.
Thank you, John. This is ThinkTech Talks, Finding Our Future on a Monday afternoon with a hookup with Moscow, Russia. We'll be right back after this break. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidell, founder of ThinkTech Hawaii. We are a digital media nonprofit that covers things that matter to tech, energy, diversification, globalism, and progress for our state, the state of Hawaii. We broadcast on community television and on Oceanic Cable Channel 16. We also stream our shows and interviews live on the internet as both radio and video, and of course we post them here on YouTube. We collaborate with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association to present monthly luncheon programs on subjects of interest to the business community, and we write for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. ThinkTech works hard to raise public awareness in Hawaii. Check out our website, thinktechhawaii.com, and come to our YouTube channel, ThinkTech Hawaii. We hope you support our mission and that you like our work. I'm Jay Fidell. Mahalo.
I know what time it is. I feel like
Okay,
I'm
we're
in three
back.
different.
We're live. This is ThinkTech Talks Finding Our Future on a Monday afternoon, although it's not quite 8 o'clock in the morning in Russia. And we really appreciate John Sweeney from UH and Alexander Chulok, a Russian futurist, joining us at this early hour from Moscow by way of Skype. We're calling this show from Russia with Foresight. Back to you, John.
Thanks, Jay. As you point out, we actually are in the future. It is Tuesday morning, not quite 8 a.m., so we had a bit of an early start. And after 2 red eyes to get over here, I'm certainly looking forward to some coffee in my immediate future. But we wanted to turn to sort of have a bit of a sort of wrap up and closing the conversation by thinking specifically about some of the geopolitical issues that Jay had mentioned. So obviously with the Edward Snowden scandal, with everything that's come out about the NSA and PRISM, there have been huge concerns about the futures of ICT, futures of privacy, futures of surveillance. And so, Alexander, I'm wondering if you could specifically address sort of how you see that and those issues in S&T policy, and maybe just talk about some of the conversations that you see happening in general related to those ICT issues and how futures can help sort of navigate those.
Well, John, it's a very important question, and I think that, first of all, I think that we should separate different policies. So there's S&T policy that is aimed at S&T areas and building up the S&T future. And there's other policy with some scandals and with some ideas how to implement different ideas to life. So my personal concern is that everybody should do what you can do and what you should do. So of course we can understand the correspondence between S&T trends, between privacy trends, and how it will influence our life. So of course it's very important. And if we talk now, maybe some I don't know, some space is looking on us, you and me and everybody. But anyway, if we want to go to some vector or to realize some scenario, we should understand what is important and what's not. And in S&P scenarios, of course, it's very important to think of social implementations of trends in ICT and NAND, even for cloning, for example. We could clone everything, but it's restricted. So maybe we should think a bit more general about restrictions of policy and restrictions of society and its implementation of S&T development. Because we could raise S&T breakthroughs, but the society says no, we don't do it. And I think it's a very fundamental question. Is society ready for S&T breakthroughs or not? Is it ready for gene passports, for example? And for everybody you have a passport and you can understand who you are from your DNA. Are we ready for this or not? Are we ready for ICT for everything? Are we ready for looking from space for each action of us? Or we want privacy? I think it's very important to talk about this, and it's very important not only to talk between us, I mean between foresighters, between futurologists, but we should go to people who are responsible for legislation, for example, and that's what we're not doing in Russia, but thinking in Russia about legislation, foresight, and foresight for laws, foresight for society. Because if we, I'm an economist myself, but if we talk about economics, if we talk about S&P, but forget about societal changes, it should be a very, very big drawback of our research. We have good progress in mass media and in communications, in technologies that could influence of crowdsourcing, for example. It's another interesting trend of using crowdsourcing technologies to implement each stakeholder. Everybody is stakeholder in this process. To implement everybody in future making. But I want to ask one simple question. Will it be the future comfortable for everybody if it is trusted by everybody? I think it's another fundamental question going to democracy and understanding who should create the future and how you should involve everybody to participate in it.
Yeah, that's very good. I know that a lot of the concerns, obviously, that have come out about the NSA and the PRISM and certainly developments in ICT is that not everyone is part of that conversation, and that the conversation is being had for a number of people. And it seems that, again, you're doing some cutting-edge research, some fantastic work to try to develop and hone policies and then to build an actual Foresight network that includes all of the stakeholders. So it's good to hear that Foresight's being done and being done well in Russia, and that there's certainly an attentiveness to obviously critical issues and the challenges of the futures, but also the opportunities and how we can find our way towards a better futures. And again, not just for Russia, but hopefully for the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fantastic to chat with you. Jay, are you there? Jay's not there.
I want to tell you, thank you, both of you, so much. This has been ThinkTech Hawaii, doing ThinkTech Talks here on a Monday, Finding Our Future. We're talking with John Sweeney, our regular Finding Our Future host, and Dr. Alexander Chulok, both in Moscow, both by way of Skype. We are very appreciative, gentlemen, that you got up early for this, and it was a great discussion, a great show. I hope, John, you enjoy your trip in Moscow, and please say goodbye. Please say "Das Vidanya" to everyone.
The Svidanya.
Das Vidanya and aloha.
Perfect pronunciation. So you're completely ready for our conference of fall.
Very excited, very excited. Gonna try to stay warm the next couple days. Gonna go find some coffee right now, and yeah, here's to a better future. Aloha.
Aloha.
Right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Aloha.
Okay.
The Svidanya.